So let's take a quick look at the new deployment experience unlocked through that Apex Cloud Platform Foundation software that showcases how easy it is to stand up an Azure Stack HCI infrastructure. So let me walk you through how we've deployed a 4-node cluster in the lab. Firstly, a virtual machine named the Cloud Platform Manager was automatically started up on one of our MC, our multi-cloud nodes, delivered from the factory, and was assigned a default IP address, which I've changed to an IP that was on my lab network. And then I browsed to that IP from a web browser, and the Day1 deployment wizard appeared, which you see here. I'll accept the EULA and confirm that I've reviewed the deployment guide and completed the necessary prerequisites. And one of the prereq steps involved creating a service principal in my Azure Active Directory tenant and assigning it the correct permissions in my Azure subscription. Now, this service principal was used to register the Azure Stack HCI cluster and onboard the cluster nodes to Azure Arc. The nodes were then automatically discovered, and a primary node was elected, and it's been identified by this house icon. A compatibility check ran to ensure that these were genuine MC nodes from Dell, and I selected all 4 nodes to build my cluster. Now you'll notice here that it says select 1 to 6 servers, so our engineering tests proved that initially creating a cluster within this node count range provided the most expedient and consistent deployment experience. Now, you can use the automated cluster expansion workflow in our Apex Cloud Platform extension in Windows Admin Center to scale out to a maximum cluster size of 16 nodes once the cluster is up and running. So the global settings here were fairly straightforward. So here you can see I indicated that I wanted our Dell extension installed automatically if it didn't already exist in Windows Admin Center. I also provided a host name, IP address, and privileged account passwords for the Cloud Platform Manager VM. Now, we've made it very easy to create the host names using a custom naming pattern to save a little bit of time. And I also selected the advanced method just down here, just to spot check that all service tags, node names, and IP addresses were aligning as expected. Now on networking ATC or network ATC greatly simplifies host networking configuration for Azure Stack HCI clusters using an intent-based approach. So I set up a non-converged network topology and thus created 2 intents. I use the integrated Ethernet adapter ports for management and compute traffic, and an additional PCI adapter with 2 ports for storage traffic. So I reviewed other settings that network ATC configured by default, including SRIOV, jumbo frame size, and RDMA implementation. And to finish up the network config, I'm going to just insert my VLAN IDs for my storage subnets and configure the cluster IP addressing information. Now this says infrastructure network with a starting and ending IP address because more services will be added to this network in future releases. So I clicked Validate Configuration to perform a final live validation of all the values I entered in this wizard to confirm that they're aligned with the rules and best practices proven by our engineering organization to ensure a smooth deployment and cluster creation experience. Now, if any errors were identified at this point, I would have the opportunity to go back to earlier steps and make corrections. So this deployment that I can now start can take a few hours to run, depending on your initial cluster size. And during the deployment, I casually observed all the many steps our developers automated to take the platform from factory delivered to a fully operational Azure hybrid cloud. And there are over 50 steps streamlined and streaming by in this View Details window. That equates to some serious administrative time saving. And once the deployment completes, I can go ahead and launch Windows Admin Center, and anybody administering Dell Apex Cloud Platform for Microsoft Azure will spend a lot of time in Windows Admin Center performing granular cluster-level Day 2 operational tasks. The automation registered my new Azure Stack HCI cluster and onboarded the cluster nodes to Azure Arc-enabled servers. So I just browse to the Azure Arc tool, and you can see I can confirm this here. And then you can also see that I can click on the Azure Resource Group to navigate to the Azure portal to see the representative resources that were created for my infrastructure. So that's it for this demo video on deploying an Azure Stack HCI cluster and creating that cluster in an automated fashion.